Really does feel like I'm a supply teacher and the Ofsted inspector's in, but... Okay, yeah, so no, seriously though, these AI conferences at the moment I think are brilliant for great speakers, great content, but the audience is awesome. We're all coming from so many different places, different job roles, different sectors, and I don't know how long that's going to last, because our industries are quite sort of insular, a bit of echo chambers, and it's one of the things I really appreciate about this conference. I am in the insight sector. I'm going to talk a little bit about what that is and our AI tipping point, so how we went from if only we could use it to a hell yeah moment. And I'm hoping this will also give you some examples of pain points that sector-specific professionals have before we can apply your brilliant technologies to our world. I'm also going to share some conference insights, conferences and ideas about conferences, just in case you might want to get into it. In preparation for this, I watched a TED Talk. I don't watch as many of those as I'd like to, on how to do a good TED Talk. And there were 7 good things, of which 6 I can't remember. But one was, thread some of yourself into your talk and how your story links to the story that you're trying to tell. So this is my attempt at doing that. Who am I? I am the co-founder with Nikki Leffley for a company called Bayes Price. That's a reference to the old school legends Thomas Bayes and his friend Richard Price. Probability theory, that kind of thing. Yeah, we're based over in Bristol. Anybody been to Bristol recently? No? You should do. It's a quality city and we'd be glad to see you. Yeah, we're based in Bristol. And as I say, who am I? I've not always looked like this wrinkly sort of Hobbit-based person. Once I had massive hair. And I was about 25 years ago, I used to write social observation lyrics and sing those over the top of Spanish flamenco guitar and sort of walk around the place trying to do that. And as you can imagine, it was a spectacular failure, primarily because I wasn't very good. However, the social observation lyrics led me to go to Sheffield University. Anybody been to Sheffield? Yay! Come on, the Chef. That's another awesome city. You can see what I'm doing here with the boosting of the regional cities thing. There's a lot of a bias towards London when it comes to AI. So if you're looking to invest in a city, why not come outside of London? That led me to sociology and ethnography studies to the master's level, where I had a great pre-Google Maps travel to Kenya to study gerontocracy, the social construction of age among a rural Samburu community in northern Kenya, and that's just tremendous, a real life-changing event. Part of that study led me to this woman who is an utter inspiration, Pat Kaplan. If you ever get to read some of her work, you'll never get through it all. Decades of work. The way that she took on ethnographic approaches was a postmodern approach. That is, throwing off the Victorian idea of a transcendental observer, the sort of top-down, looking down of us and other, and rather in a writing style, writing so the reader can hear the voices of the pages, indeed providing a stage on which people can express themselves. And that's what I've taken throughout my entire profession. Provide a stage on which people can express themselves. Do not try and interpret too much. Get the opinions of people to the decision-making table when decisions are being made about those people, which 5 years ago led me to set up Bayes Price. As I say, we're based in Bristol, and we do try and provide a stage on which people can express themselves. We are part of all these organisations. A little insight into the insight sector. Market Research Society, if you've heard of it, the world's oldest and most established society for insights. The Association for Survey Computing, I think everybody would fit in really well there. Nice, friendly bunch of peer-to-peer knowledge share. I served as chair of that. We do 2 conferences a year. Insights Consultants Group, about 450 insight consultants, from stats to qualis to quantitative. If you ever need a network of insight specialists, go to the Insights Consultants Group. Research Society in Australia, got to give them a bit of a plug because I spent some time in Aussie and they're brilliant people. And the TS API standard, I'm a steering group chair of that to create and maintain an API standard for transferring hierarchical survey data. So that's basically where I come from, and it allows me to go to awesome conferences like this to try and explore what's going on and what's new. So Big Data London, right? And people have been to Big Data London. Yeah, lots of nods in the room. Anybody got a top favourite of this year's event? I'll let you know what mine was. It was this. Turning business leaders into data advocates. It was organised by Women in Data and chaired by Tiffany Manchu. And some of the key takeouts of that were seniors may be analog leaders in a digital world. So always speak the language of business and beware of big shiny itis. The next big thing may not be the best fit. I thought this was just a tremendous thing. As you're developing software, take everybody along. And also, a good one is conversational. So quirky code parameters just don't cut it anymore. Search and analysis needs to be conversational. See where we're going with that. This guy was the keynote. Trust but verify. Building production-ready Gen AI applications. What he was saying, in essence, was that you may have data all over the place and you bring it all together and you put it through all of these processes, whatever they may be, and you go along to your CEO and say, computer says yes, and the CEO says, prove it, and you can't. And that is the fundamental problem with the insight sector. We have had decades of credibility built on evidence and transparency. And at the moment, or not at the moment, there was a time when technology could not get to the same level of transparency and evidence-based insight as a human. But you can tell what's coming, right? So the two things that to really take out of that is communicate clearly and prove it. And ultimately, as the MRS says, evidence matters. What do I mean by the insights sector? Well, customer satisfaction, you get them all the time. How do you feel about this, that, and the other? But if you scale that insight up, it's amazing what you can do. You can see regional differences, you can see service level differences, and you make significant changes. Campaign evaluation, Pixel launches in the Netherlands. They want to understand how people are exposed to an advert on a mobile phone versus a TV versus not exposed, is affecting their funnel and intent to purchase. Brand strategy, how do we sit amongst our brands? And employee engagement speaks for itself. The insights sector itself has doubled in size in the last 10 years. And it used to be, I didn't start in 1994, not too far from that actually. It used to be that half of all the questionnaires and the surveys we did were paper. We'd print them out. Tried to at least, before the black goo spewed out of the printer and we had to phone somebody up, and we'd post them out, and then they'd go around and they'd be filled in by people actually talking to each other face to face, and then they'd be sent back, often smelling of like cigarettes and wet dog hair a lot of the time. Whereas now, 75% of it is online, and that doesn't just mean faster. That means a hell of a lot more research is being done. So AI analysis, how can we try to use AI analysis in the insights sector? The example I'm going to use is free text coding. That is an open-ended answer. So instead of asking somebody from a scale of 0 to 10, how do you feel? But you actually give them the option to say anything they like. Free text coding. So how do we quantify that? Well, in order to explain the significance of what AI and large language models can do for us today, I need to go back to a golden era. And it was a time when the back of your computer looked like that, but I don't know how they got the dust off theirs. It was a time of pub lunches, which were occasionally paid for out of the petty cash. Yes, and those paper questionnaires used to come in with a little mark on them. For example, to a question, how likely are you to recommend brand to friends and family, which equates to Net Promoter Score, right? So you get 0 to 6 are your detractors, for anybody who is not that aware, 7 to 8 are your passives category, and 9 to 10 are your promoters. And you take the proportion of your detractors away from the proportion of your promoters, and you get a 0, minus 100 to plus 100 Net Promoter Score. Now that tells us what's going on and what people are thinking, but it doesn't tell them why. Why do they think like that? So you ask them, why do you say that? That's fundamental. If anybody's doing NPS without a why follow-up, you need to add a why follow-up. So, for example, their equipment is very easy to use and it works. Just a little expensive. So I would sit there years ago when I didn't have a wrinkly face with a felt tip pen. And I would say, oh, easy to use, that's a topic, put a 1 there. And then in green one, I put 2 there. Then I put a 30 there. And then I'd start to build up a code frame over the other side called easy to use. Maybe that's in the group of service and it's positive sentiment. Let's go again on the next one. And the next one, quality products that last a long time. And before you know where you are, you've got a code frame that's built up from human interpretation. It's got groups, it's got sentiment. And you've got all the individual codes too. So we'd send that off, and a puncher, well, they used to call it punch-in. Anybody heard the phrase punch-in? It's because they used to actually punch holes in the cards and then put it through a machine. So a puncher would put it into a data file, and that would come back to us, and then we would process it, and we would get percentages. Ha! Because then we could group those percentages and suddenly deliver some actionable Insight, not actionable, but insight. I'll come to actionable in a minute. So, for example, in the blue we have the positive sentiment, and in the red we have the negative sentiment. And here are our conversational categories. So service, a lot of positive, price and value, possibly a bit more negative. And somebody would say, well, that's great. Now we know what and why people are talking about, but how can we make a change? How should I spend my, my budget on making a change? So what we would do is something like this. Now, this is years ago. Nothing new. We would cross it with Net Promoter Score. So down the side here is that quantitative scale, minus 100 to plus 100, really positive, very negative. The size of the bubbles are the number of people talking about a particular theme, which is the label, and the color is whether they're talking positively or negatively. And you could, if you wished, say, right, I'm going to focus on brand. But if you focused on brand, what would happen? You'd only really hit a few number of people, and you're not really going to change it that much, because brand, positive and negative, is not that different. So ultimately, where you want to go is to target these people, to try and understand what is it about my product that is upsetting these people? Because if I can fix these people, there's a hell of a lot of low-hanging fruit here, and they could reach right up to the top, and everybody's going to recommend our product a lot more. So that's the kind of the gold standard where we were at. And as a junior, you used to sit in a strategic meeting with your clients or stakeholders and feel really out of your depth when everybody was talking about strategic comments, and a lot was going over your head. However, you'd read every single one of those open-ended answers. So what you'd memorized in your head was gold. And when somebody was talking about a topic, you could reel off a statement straight off the bat. And it would be brilliant insight, and it might even get you a promotion. So very valuable for the junior there. However, there was a big change, and it happened very, very quickly, which was paper questionnaires went out, and online questionnaires arrived, and everybody wanted their answers yesterday, and there was just so much data going on that we genuinely couldn't handle it. And then with the perfect storm of doubling in size, there was just so much free text data, nobody could read it. So clever people thought, right, we've got to keep hold of that gold, right? How are we going to mine it? What are we going to do? Well, as you know, bit of text recognition. If Q7 equals Apple, then Q7 coded equals 1, and blah, 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 blah. That's all right for brand coding, but not very good for spellings and typos, and longer answers, it's just not going to happen. So that was not the silver bullet we needed. There was machine learning. We've worked with some very clever people in Australia. You know, we would code some text, maybe 500 responses of a survey. Then the human would learn from that, and the machine codes the rest of the database. I'm obviously preaching to the converted here. However, it requires training data in the first place. So that's a fundamental flaw. When we've got so much data coming in, we don't even have enough time to do the training data. It learns by my mistakes. Sector specific, so there is no context really, and nuance is lost. So say you're in the private health insurance industry and there's a difference between good service and good services, our machine learning would rarely pick that up. And as you can tell now, it's hard to explain. So if you can't communicate something clearly, you're not going to get buy-in, and evidence matters. We could not trace what the machine learning model was doing all the way back to the respondent level. If I filtered by one person, how is it coding that? So what about sentiment? As you saw before, I, as a coder, used to just say, well, they're talking positively about that and negatively about that, and it was kind of like an organic thing. So dictionary lookup systems were used, like the Suzette dictionary. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Have used that quite a bit. And again, evidence matters. Every word in the English language has been listed and given a score from, like, you know, -3 to +3 in terms of how negative and positive somebody thinks the sentiment is. For example, love is +2, good is +1. Therefore, the sentence "love is good" would be given a score of +3. Really easy to do and transparent, and the client can see exactly what's been coded and where, and can access the dictionary. An example of that being put into practice was when COVID happened. We started collecting tweets about COVID. We were up to about 20 million or something, and we applied the Suzette sentiment dictionary to that, so we can see negative plus positive, and then we can do an average over time. It's kind of a nice forest view of how people are feeling about the topic matter, but it's certainly not the actionable insight that we need. So another NRC emotion lexicon, which is kind of interesting. It was developed by the National Research Council of Canada. They got 100 coders, human coders, to read 30 classic English novels and to assign one of these 10 emotions: anger, anticipation, disgust, fear, to every word in the novel, 100 of them. And then they took the average of that to create the dictionary. And therefore, if you see the word abhorrent in your data set, You then assign it this multiple response data, and then you can do stuff with that, right? You can chart it for a start. So here is our NRC emotion categories here, and these are the same tweets. So we can see there's a lot of conversation about trust and fear and anticipation. And then if you cut that by themes, we can see tweets that are talking about the pandemic far, far, far away are kind of assigned more to fear and sadness, whereas tweets that talk about, do you call them tweets now or X's? What are they called? I can't remember. Anyway, vaccines, Pfizer, AstraZeneca, that's more related to anticipation and trust. So kind of makes sense. But again, it's that forest eye view, and we would get false positives. So not good equal positive, false negatives, not bad equal negative, and there's absolutely no context whatsoever. So the uncomfortable truth is, before AI, insight is going to waste on a mass scale, and that is a tragedy. You guys have been filling in surveys, given your heartfelt opinion about things. We just haven't had the resources to be able to bring that to the decision-making table. However, AI analysis from no way to hell yeah. We have been working with a company called Helix. Luke is in the room here. They are a bootstrapped company who, excuse me if I get this wrong, Luke, but enable companies like mine to get open source large language models into our own stack, our own Azure space. And so we've got technology which can now, we can now apply a large language model to analyze it in a safe space. This has been done by using the TS API standard, so the API standard I talked about before, hierarchical transfer of survey data. You wouldn't believe it, but this is revolutionary in the insight sector. A lot of guys have done it like 40 years ago. It's a hard rock to push up the hill, that, but we're trying. And this is an example of how we've done it. I am not brave enough to do a live demo. I'm not even brave enough to talk along to a video of a demo. So these are screenshots of a video of a demo that I'm going to talk to, because then we can control it, right? So yeah, so this is like an our platform. So here we've got the survey variables, Q1, Q4, Q7, and we select the variables that we want to analyze. We're not creating percentage tables as you saw before. These are the individual responses. There's actually someone who's female, 45 to 55, talking about Apple, who said, why do you like it? Because I stick with that assuming brand. Now, how are we going to analyze that? Well, we select our analysis variable here in the top chat, and it's a very intuitive chat situation where we ask, in 100 words, tell me what people are talking about at Q7. We've given it 0 context, but it kind of comes up with a fairly good answer, you know. Many respondents appreciate quality and reliability. Some are talking about loyalty, some are talking about cost, and the sentiment is generally positive. Okay, are there any differences between younger and older people? Now notice we haven't said reference age group. It's worked that out because it's got the data. We haven't had to tell it to look at the age group. Overall, younger respondents tend to focus more on quality, and there are some concerns about the cost of Apple products, whereas older respondents emphasize loyalty and customer service. There's real value here. All right. What can we do next? What are the top themes? See that thematic analysis we did as a human? Can you do that, clever clogs? Well, let's see. Yes, it can. It can bring up 6 or 7 themes about brand, loyalty, product. It can tell you what it means by that, and it can give you a couple of examples. Job done? Not at all. Yet another false dawn, because I can't walk into the CEO's office and say computer said yes. I have no real evidence. As Anupam Datta said, as a man who works in data, that's a cool surname, right? He said, prove it, and evidence matters. We're a company partner of the MRS, so we can't just walk in there and say that. However, there was a tipping point. Because of TS API, we managed to have an extra little function down here called tag themes. Now, if we click that, it says, these are the themes that we've had from the chat. That's the prompt-driven context. Do you want to edit any of those? Do you want to add some? Do you want to enable sentiment analysis? And then we preview the themes. We don't want to tag the whole database and like wait around 15 minutes just to see that it's wrong, right? So we just preview what we can see here, and you can see some of the brands are listed here, and there is some sentiment. So you generally get a feel of whether that's right or wrong, and if it's wrong, then you can go back again and then tag it to the database, which means you now have Q7 themes, Q7 sentiment. Very simple. I'm sure a lot of you guys are doing stuff much more advanced, but for our sector, that moment there was a light bulb moment, right? And because, why? Now we can create these wonderful little data tables that have the aggregated percentages of service, price, and value product. We can cut it by positive versus negative. Notice it's a multiple response variable. Some comments could have been both, is what I mean by that. And then we can connect these columns to a background data of a PowerPoint chart, which I don't know about you, but a lot of our clients still use it, and they're not going to get rid of it. And then we're back to the time of old, where we can do this actionable insight. But what's more, we can scale this up now, and we can automate this. So all of your lovely opinions that are so valuable, we can now mine, which is brilliant. And another little win is the person that worked on the AI is the person that coded all the text. They're at the presentation again. They're adding value. That younger person is contributing. Their contribution is very, very valuable. 5 minutes. So why human AI? Well, it's easy to use. Prompt-driven context. It's editable. It's traceable insight. It's transparent. We can scale it. We can automate it. We can dig deeper. If you like that, then get a human involved. Right? Use that as a base. And then let's get the human. But don't take our word for it. Oh, no. Has anybody been to the IIX conference at all? Get along to this one, right? There's North America, but Europe in Amsterdam and lots of other places. Just as an example, in April 2023, I hosted, we were still talking about metaverse traps, right? But by the time 2 months later, when we got to Austin, everybody was talking about AI, and Europe was not left behind. By the time we got back to Europe, every single stand was all about predictive AI. They'd not just got funding, they'd not just developed technology, they've been deploying it amongst their existing clients, which is absolutely awesome. And it's everywhere, right? This is the SMR conference, Europe's leading insights conference, the Market Research Society annual conference, and my favorite, it's only about 100 people go to that one, but come along, nice people, ASC, it's all about AI. So I've just tagged these in really quickly at the end based on what I've heard today, because it struck me that this is going to fundamentally change the way in which we run survey data. Surveys are going to become far more conversational. You don't speak to people like, would you like a cup of tea on an agreement scale of 1 to 5? You don't do that, do you? You just talk to each other. And I think that that's what we're going to be able to do, especially with the voice-activated devices that we all have. You're going to get a clean insight. It's all going to be going up and it's going off to the decision makers, which takes me to daily democracy, which is that we don't have to wait 5 years for our voices to be heard. These surveys that you're all filling out are actually influencing the decisions that are changing your world every day. So do fill out any more of our surveys. Please, it would be great to see you at another conference. Thank you. I've been Matthew Gibbs. Hopefully that was insightful.